I never wanted the morgue. Growing up, I knew my grandfather ran it, tucked away in a forgotten corner of our dying town. It sat behind the old cemetery, gray-bricked and windowless, a building everyone knew, but no one talked about. When I was a kid, my parents would drive past it without a word, their eyes fixed on the road ahead. My mother used to mutter something under her breaths, some prayer in Urdu that I didn't understand, but I always noticed she gripped the steering wheel tighter when we passed. When he died, the deed came to me. It wasn't sentimental. He left it to me because there was no one else. No cousins, no uncles. I hadn't spoken to the old man in 10 years, but the town lawyer called me, said the building was mine now, along with a small sum of money and a key wrapped in old twine. The envelope it came in smelled like formaldehyde and something sour. At the time, I had just lost my job. I was living out of my car, so I went. I told myself it was temporary. Just clean it out, maybe sell it off if anyone would buy it. But from the moment I stepped onto the property, I knew something wasn't right. It was too quiet, not just in the morgue, outside too. The birds didn't chirp here. The wind didn't move the trees the same way. The air felt dense, like walking underwater. I unlocked the steel front door and was hit with a wall of cold, chemical air. The interior hadn't changed since the 70s, peeling green paint, humming fluorescent lights, and linoleum floors that stuck faintly to my shoes. The power was still running, the lights were still on, and the drawers, they were closed. All 20 of them, neatly labeled in fading black ink. Each one had a name. Some had dates going back decades. A letter sat on the receptionist's desk. It was written in my grandfather's handwriting, sharp, deliberate cursive, the kind that only men from another era seemed to have. It read, "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and the duty falls to you. There are rules, follow them, or they won't stay inside." I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. I should have turned around. I should have locked the place back up, burned the letter, and left. But something about the way he'd written it, it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a plea. That first night, I stayed in the office upstairs. There was a cot, a kettle, even a radio. My grandfather had clearly lived here full time. I lay in bed listening to the whir of refrigeration below me, trying not to think about the bodies. But sometime around 2 a.m., I heard a drawer click open, just one. I didn't check. I told myself it was the cold, metal shifting, just the building settling. That's what I told myself. But in the morning, I found drawer 14 open by 2 inches. Inside it was empty. No tag, no record, nothing. Just a faint smudge on the floor beneath it, like a damp footprint that had long since dried. I told myself maybe my grandfather had cleaned it before he died. Maybe it was never full. But that didn't explain the sound. It didn't explain the dream I had that night of someone knocking from inside a drawer. I wish I had left then, because the next day, I found a list of rules taped to the back of the fridge, and I learned drawer 14 should never be opened. I found the rules on my second day, taped to the back of the old fridge in the break room, yellowed and curling at the edges. 7 lines, handwritten in the same precise cursive my grandfather used in the letter. The top simply read, "Rules of the morgue, do not deviate." Beneath it, never open drawer 14, not even to check. Not even if you think it's empty. If you hear tapping from inside a drawer, do not respond, do not speak, do not approach. Every night before midnight, count all 20 drawers. Write the number down. Place the count sheet on the metal table. If you return in the morning and the count sheet is missing, leave the building immediately and do not return until sunset. Do not turn off the hallway lights, ever. If you find a drawer open more than 4 inches, push it closed using the long metal rod. Do not touch it directly. At no point should you bring flowers inside. I stood there, staring at it, feeling my skin tighten with cold. I couldn't blame on the room temperature. it would have been easy to dismiss them as the ramblings of an old man, senile, paranoid, eccentric. But drawer 14 had already opened on its own, and now I was being told not to ever touch it. Something wasn't right. I tried to laugh it off, though it came out thin and dry. A nervous tick more than anything. Maybe he just wanted to scare me. Maybe it was some elaborate joke for whoever ended up inheriting this place. But I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched as I read the list. The air felt heavier in that room, like someone else was breathing just behind me. I grabbed a magnet and pinned the rules to the filing cabinet next to the front desk. Some part of me, deep and old and primitive, didn't want to disrespect them. I wasn't ready to believe, but I wasn't ready to tempt fate either. That afternoon, I wandered the morgue in full daylight. The layout was small, but claustrophobic. A long hallway with rows of drawers built into the walls. A metal gurney in the center of the exam room. Cabinets of outdated instruments. Surgical gloves sealed in cracking plastic. There was even an embalming room, though it looked like it hadn't been used in years. In the office, I found dusty logbooks. Dozens of them. Inside each entry was meticulous. My grandfather had recorded every arrival, time of death, drawer number, cause, and condition. What chilled me was the frequency of some names. The same person listed twice, same name, same drawer, years apart. One man, Robert Weller, appeared in the logs 3 times, each time in drawer 7, each time without explanation for how he returned, and no autopsy. The more I flipped, the less sense it made. Dates blurred, handwriting wavered. Some entries were written in all caps, as if my grandfather had been shouting through the pen. On a few pages, the ink bled deep, like he had pressed the pen into the paper with frantic pressure. On one page, I found, "They don't stay dead if you don't follow the rules." All caps, underlined 3 times. I closed the book. I decided I'd sleep upstairs again, but this time I left the lights on in the hall. Just like rule number 5 said. I didn't believe it, not fully, but I believed it enough. As I made tea in the break room, I noticed something else. The hallway light had no switch. None. No obvious way to turn it off at all. I followed the wiring along the wall and found a circuit box in the far corner. The hallway light was wired into a fused breaker that had been soldered into the on position, deliberately, as if someone had physically ensured it could never be turned off. I didn't touch it. That night, the dreams came again. Heavy ones, of bodies standing in the hallway, perfectly still, their heads tilted at unnatural angles, of drawers slowly sliding open, one by one, and shapes crawling out like they were made of smoke. At 11:54 p.m., I jolted awake in a cold sweat. I remembered. Rule number 3. Count all 20 drawers before midnight. I hadn't done it. Panicked, I raced down the stairs barefoot, clutching the rule sheet in my fist. I ran into the cold metal hallway, the fluorescent lights humming above. The drawers stood silent, closed. I counted them once, then again, then a third time to be sure. 20. All 20. I scribbled 20 on a notepad, tore off the page, and placed it on the steel exam table. Then I stood there for a long moment, staring at the drawers, listening for tapping. There was none. When I turned to head back upstairs, I glanced over my shoulder one last time. Man saw drawer 14. It was flush, shut, just as it had been. But someone had scratched something into the metal above the handle. Something new. It said, "You're late." I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat at the foot of the cot upstairs, every light on, listening to the hum of electricity and the occasional creak of aging walls. I kept glancing at the clock, replaying that message scratched into drawer 14 over and over in my mind. "You're late." How did it get there? I would have heard someone. No one had entered. I was certain, and yet it hadn't been there when I first arrived. It wasn't old. The scratches were fresh, tiny metal curls, still clinging to the grooves like they'd been made hours ago. at sunrise. I forced myself back downstairs. The note I'd left on the exam table was gone. It wasn't on the floor. It hadn't blown away. I checked every inch of the room. Gone. Rule number 4 flashed in my head. If the count sheet is missing in the morning, leave immediately and do not return until sunset. I hesitated. The logical part of me screamed that maybe I had misplaced it. Maybe I'd thrown it away in my exhausted state. But the deeper part, the one that remembered my grandfather's handwriting and the bruised look in his eyes in that old photo on the wall, told me otherwise. I stepped outside. The cold air slapped me awake. It was overcast, windless. Even the crows avoided the trees above the morgue. I paced the lot for an hour. Then 2. I watched the sun climb through the haze. At noon, I got back in my car, started the engine, and waited. I didn't re-enter the building until precisely 6:01 p.m. Everything was as I'd left it, except drawer 8 was open by exactly 4 inches, not 5, not 3.4. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I hadn't touched drawer 8 since I arrived. I hadn't even looked at it closely. I checked the rule list again. Rule number 6. If you find a drawer open more than 4 inches, push it closed using the long metal rod. Do not touch it directly. But it was 4 inches. Exactly. I stared at it for a long time, waiting for something, movement, sound, breath, nothing. Eventually, I walked back to the break room and poured myself a cup of tea with shaking hands. The worst thing wasn't the fact that it had opened. The worst thing was that something new, the rules too. That night, I made sure to count all 20 drawers, early 11:30, on the dot. I double-checked each one, whispering the numbers under my breath, heart thudding with every click of a drawer being gently tested. They were all closed, even drawer 8. I wrote 20 on a new sheet, folded it, and placed it on the exam table, with a weight on top this time. Still, I couldn't sleep. Around 3 a.m., I heard a tap, just one, not a knock, not a slam, just a single, hollow tap, like a finger lightly touching the inside of a drawer. It came from below. I knew rule number 2. If you hear tapping from inside a drawer, do not respond, do not speak, do not approach. I stayed frozen under the blanket, eyes wide in the dark. I counted my breaths. I listened for a second tap, a third dot, nothing, just silence. But I could feel it now, not a sound, but a presence. Something awake. Morning came slow and gray. When I finally dared to go downstairs, I found the count note still there, untouched, but something had changed again. This time, it was drawer 17. A streak of red had appeared along the edge, thin, almost dried dot, blood dot, and on the floor beneath it, scrawled in faint, brown lettering, as if written in old rust, were 4 simple words: don't test the rules. I stood there for almost a full minute, just staring at those words on the floor. Don't test the rules. They hadn't been there the night before. I was certain of it. The floor had been clean. I'd mopped it myself, trying to shake off the feeling that the morgue was watching me now. There they were, written in something thick and brown and iron-scented. The red smear on drawer 17 hadn't moved, but it looked fresh now, like it had glistened at some point in the night and only just dried in the morning light. I didn't open it. I didn't clean it. Instead, I went back upstairs, locked the office door, and sat in the old recliner with my grandfather's rules in my lap. Something was escalating. I could feel it in the air, like static, just before a lightning strike by the 4th day. I wasn't even pretending to sleep. I kept the hallway lights on constantly, checked the drawers every few hours, and left a new count sheet on the table nightly 3 times now. It had vanished by morning. I obeyed the rule, stayed out till sundown. Every time I returned, something was different. The photos in the break room shifted. The old radio crackled to life on its own once, playing nothing but faint breathing and muffled voices. And the drawers, they watched me. I know how that sounds. But have you ever stood in a room and felt something waiting for you to leave? Like a dog watching the door for its owner to slip up? That's how it felt, like they were patient, like they had time. That evening, I was brushing my teeth in the cracked mirror above the sink when I noticed something odd. There were flowers on the counter. Lilies, white, damp, fresh. Rule #7. At no point should you bring flowers inside. I hadn't. I swear to we hadn't brought anything in. The doors had been locked, the windows sealed. And yet here they were, delicate and full, and sitting in a chipped porcelain vase I had never seen before. The air smelled like funeral homes and old perfume. I picked them up with shaking hands and walked them out the back door, hurling the whole vase into the woods behind the building. I didn't wait to see where it landed. I just shut the door and bolted it behind me. But later, around 2:17 a.m., the scent returned. I woke up coughing, my nose filled with that same thick, floral rot. And from the window of the upstairs office, I could see something on the metal table. Below, the lilies were back, no vase, just lying across the count sheet, perfectly arranged. I didn't go down. I just watched them until dawn, hands clenched so hard I left half moons in my palms. At sunrise, they vanished, just gone. But drawer 9 was now cracked open, not 4 inches, not 5, exactly 3. And I could hear something inside, a low drawn-out inhale, like lungs that hadn't breathed in years. Remembering how rule number 2 came rushing back. If you hear tapping from inside a drawer, do not respond, do not speak, do not approach. This wasn't tapping, but it felt like the rule still applied. I stood frozen in the doorway for what felt like hours, watching that thin line of darkness between the drawer and its frame, waiting for something, anything, to reach out. Eventually, the breathing stopped. The drawer slid shut on its own with a soft mechanical click. I didn't ask questions, not out loud, because somewhere deep down, I was starting to understand. The rules weren't precautions. They were deals, conditions, promises my grandfather had made to something ancient and patient and buried beneath layers of metal and flesh. And now that he was gone, it was my turn to uphold them or suffer what came crawling out when I didn't. By the 5th night, the fear had changed. It wasn't just dread anymore, it was curiosity, something deeper, not hope, not courage, just a gnawing need to understand. Why the rules? Why the flowers? Why did drawer 14 make the floor feel colder than the others? I couldn't sleep, not even for a moment. My brain was stitching patterns between the events. A drawer creaks open after a missed count, a warning scrawled in blood, the return of lilies no one ever brought. It was all connected, and I knew where to look next. The attic. I hadn't dared go up there yet, but now I had no choice. The stairwell was narrow and dust-choked, every board groaning as I climbed. At the top, I found a rusted hatch and pulled it open. Inside was darkness, cobwebs, and the sharp scent of old insulation and mildew. I flicked on my flashlight. Boxers, dozens of them. Some stacked neatly, others collapsed or half-eaten by rodents. Most were labeled in my grandfather's handwriting, just names and dates, but a few were marked with a red X. One in particular stood out. Unfiled cases do not open naturally. I opened it. Inside were 6 thick folders and 1 reel of Super 8 film, wrapped in wax paper. I spread the folders across the floor and started reading. Each contained a case file that never made it into the official logs. The first was dated 1971. Subject, Dolores H. Status, presumed deceased. Drawer assigned, number 14 notes, body found in woods, partially embalmed. Autopsy inconclusive. Drawer locked by request of local clergy. A clergy. Why would a priest dictate where a corpse should be kept? The second file, dated 1985, was worse. Subject, unknown male, approx 30s. Drawer assigned. Number Y notes, Found near river. No ID. Face distorted, pulled into smile with broken jaw. Body returned to drawer 4 times. Drawer emits noise nightly. Tap pattern matches Morse code for hungry. I closed that one quickly. Each file got darker, more surreal. Autopsies that mentioned impossible anatomical features. No organs, but functioning systems. Mouths where there should be none. One file claimed a corpse blinked during preparation. By the 4th file, I found something worse than the records. A photo, black and white, slightly faded. A group of 6 men standing around drawer 14, back when it was first installed. All of them wore surgical masks, except one, my grandfather. He looked terrified. Not scared like a man facing danger, but like someone who had seen too much and was trying to carry it alone. Behind them, in the photo's background, was a shape blurry, barely visible, but it had eyes, long fingers, and what looked like a grin carved into where a mouth should have been. I flipped it over. On the back, it feeds on patterns. We gave it rules. I sat there in the attic for over an hour, reading everything, trying to make sense of the madness. It wasn't just that the bodies moved. It wasn't just that they came back. The rules weren't protection. They were containment. Someone or something was inside drawer 14. That much was clear. And for decades, the morgue had operated under a quiet pact. Keep the routines. Follow the instructions. Keep the thing fed, or at least satisfied. Because when the routines were broken, when the count was missed, when flowers were brought, when drawers were touched, directly things woke up, things responded. I took the super, 8 reeled down to the office, and found an old projector in the back closet. After a bit of fumbling, I threaded the film and hit play. No sound, just shaky, silent black and white. Footage. It showed the inside of the morgue in 1993. The same layout, the same metal tables. A younger version of my grandfather walked into frame, pushing a drawer closed using the long metal rod. Drawer 17. Behind him, the lights flickered. The footage jittered, then paused. Froze on one frame. Something inside drawer 17 had been caught, moving. You could just barely make out fingers curling back in as the drawer sealed shut. Long, bony, not human. The next frame cut to static. The final few seconds showed my grandfather writing something on the wall, over and over. A single phrase. The rules are not to protect you. They're to protect it from being noticed. Being noticed. That line stuck with me. That night, I checked the drawers, like always, counted, left a note, but I also did something I shouldn't have. I stood in front of drawer 14, just stood, listening, and for the first time I heard a voice, not out loud, not in my ears, but inside my head, faint, ancient, like a whisper passing through a wall of water. It said, "You looked too long." I didn't move. The voice, if you could call it that, wasn't just in my head. It moved through me, like it was brushing past the folds of my brain, inspecting everything. My memories, my fears, my reasons for being here. I could feel it watching from behind the drawer's steel face. "You looked too long." The words echoed inside me again, but quieter, closer. I backed away. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. The hallway lights flickered overhead, one long buzz cutting through the silence like a bone saw. I stumbled to the office and locked the door, breathing through my teeth, clutching the rule list to my chest like it was scripture. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. And sometime around 4 a.m., I realized the lights had gone out. All of them. The hallway, the break room, even the emergency bulbs mounted near the floor. Darkness wrapped the entire lower level like a burial sheet. Rule number 5. Do not turn off the hallway lights, ever. My blood ran cold. I sprinted to the breaker panel. Every switch was still on. But the hallway breaker, the one that had been soldered permanently into place, was melted, not tripped, not loosened, melted, as if something had boiled it from the inside. I stood in the pitch dark for a moment, flashlight trembling in my grip. The silence was absolute, thick, unnatural, and then a click. One drawer opening, slowly followed by a dragging sound, something pulling itself out onto the floor. I didn't wait to see which drawer it was. I turned and bolted, tripping over a stool and smashing my shin into the gurney. I crawled toward the stairs, flashlight swinging wildly behind me, and caught just a glimpse of movement. Pale-skinned dot joints bent the wrong way, a head that twitched every few seconds, as if it couldn't decide which direction to face. It stood in front of drawer 14, and it was smiling, not a human smile. This one stretched too wide, the lips peeling like paper, teeth like slivers of bone. And then it spoke, not aloud, not in my ears, but in the same way drawer 14 had whispered directly into my thoughts. The rules bind me. You frayed the thread. It took a step forward. My flashlight flickered another step. The drawers behind it began to creak, some opening, others slamming shut violently, like they were responding to its presence. Screaming erupted from drawer 7, a woman's voice, real, raw, desperate, shouting, "Help me, please, someone, I'm still in here." I froze. Was it real? Was it bait? Rule number 2 screamed in my memory. If you hear tapping from inside a drawer, do not respond. Do not speak. Do not approach. But this wasn't tapping. This was begging. A living voice, crying, choking, and something inside me broke. I ran, not toward the drawer, up the stairs. I locked the office door behind me and shoved the desk against it. My breath felt ragged, thin. I could still hear her screaming, not in the distance, but in the walls. The air grew heavy, wet, like I was breathing through cloth. Then silence, complete. I stayed upstairs for hours, gripping the metal rod from the exam room in one hand and a flashlight in the other. When daylight finally seeped through the boarded window, I crept down the stairs. The hallway was dark, still the drawers were all closed. Again except one, drawer 7. There was no sign of blood, no body, just scratch marks on the inside of the drawer lid. Long jagged streaks, like someone had been trying to claw their way out. No flowers, but something else had been left on the exam table. A human tooth, polished, smooth, no blood, just lying there like it had been offered. Next to it, scribbled in ash, the rules don't just protect you, they feed me. That night, I rewired the lights. I didn't care if it was safe. I broke every fire code in the book, running extension cords to backup generators and portable lamps. I left no shadow unlit, but around midnight, just after writing the drawer count for the night, something shifted again. This time it wasn't a drawer. It was the rule list, the one I'd pinned up, the one I checked daily, obeyed religiously now. There was an 8th rule written in a different hand, sharper, uneven, burned into the paper like it had been branded. If it ever speaks your name, run. I stared at it, heart pounding, and then, behind me, from the direction of drawer 14, a whisper, clear, deliberate, my name, spoken like a lover's curse. I ran, out the front door, across the overgrown gravel lot, into the tree line. I didn't stop until I hit the rusted fence at the edge of the old cemetery. My lungs felt like fire. My legs, wet with dew and shaking it, had said my name, not guessed it, not spoken something close to it, exactly as if it had always known, as if it had been waiting to use it. The next morning, I made a decision. I drove into town. It was the first time I'd left the property in nearly a week. My first stop was the county archives. I needed answers. I needed something, anything to confirm I wasn't going insane. But the morgue didn't exist on any map. I found property records that labeled the plot as utility storage. No medical license, no permits, no tax filings. It had been erased. I tried the newspaper, the microfiche. Nothing about my grandfather, No obituary, no retirement announcement. Not even a mention of the morgue in police logs. It was like he had never existed. Defeated, I drove to the only place I could think of, Father Mallory. He'd baptized me as a baby. I hadn't seen him in years, but I remembered his connection to my grandfather. They used to have long, quiet conversations under the elm tree outside the chapel. I always assumed it was about death prayers, last rites, that sort of thing. He was older now, thinner, but his eyes hadn't changed. When I stepped into his office and told him who I was, he didn't blink. "You stayed at the morgue," he said. Not a question. "I inherited it," I replied. "He left it to me. The keys, the rules, the drawers." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "He should have burned that place." I leaned in. "You know what's in drawer 14, don't you?" He hesitated. Then, "No one knows what's in it. Not even him. But I know what happened because of it." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a manila folder, old, brittle. Inside was a single photograph. It was the same one I found in the attic. The 6 men, the drawer, the blurry shape. But this copy had something else written on the back. A name, Dr. A. Kessler. I asked him who that was. "He was your grandfather's mentor," Father Mallory said. "A mortician from Europe. He brought something with him, an entity, a hunger. He tried to contain it, using ritual, rules, logic. Your grandfather was his apprentice. He inherited the burden when Kessler vanished. He opened the drawer one night. That's all we know." I sat in silence. Finally, I asked, "Why lilies? Why the flowers?" Father Mallory closed his eyes. "Offerings. Back when the rules were more primitive, people left flowers to keep the thing asleep, to keep it from becoming curious." I told him about the rule list changing, about the 8th rule. His face went pale. "No one ever gets a new rule. If it spoke your name, it's already marked you." Then he said something I'll never forget. "If it speaks your name, it's not asking permission." I left without saying goodbye. I didn't want prayers. I wanted truth. When I got back to the morgue, the door was open, wide. Inside, everything looked the same until I got to the hallway. The drawers were all slightly open, just enough to show the darkness inside. And taped to the exam table was a fresh note, a letter. Handwritten in my grandfather's script. "You've broken the balance. I should have told you everything, but I thought if I gave you the rules, it would be enough. I was wrong. Kessler didn't vanish. He became part of it. The rules feed it. Yes, but they also bind it. Each one is a thread in a web we no longer understand. Every broken rule is a cut thread. The more it learns your name, the more it remembers what it was before the drawers. And at the bottom, if you're reading this, it means I failed, and now so will you." Then I noticed something else. The rule list on the wall, gone. In its place, scratched directly into the metal cabinet behind it, was a new message. The rules never mattered. You were always the next drawer. I didn't scream. I couldn't. There was something paralyzing about seeing your own fate etched into metal. Permanent, cold, unavoidable. You were always the next drawer. I backed away slowly, my feet dragging against the sticky linoleum floor. The drawers, all of them, were still open by an inch or two. Just enough for a fingertip to slip through. Just enough for something inside to watch. I could feel it now. A pressure in the air. A thrum just below the level of hearing. Like the morgue itself had taken a breath and was waiting to exhale. The rules were gone. The flowers were gone. Even the lights were dimmer than they'd ever been, casting long, twitching shadows that refused to sit still. I ran, not out the front door. Not this time. I ran toward the back of the morgue, past the embalming room, through a door I hadn't opened since the day I arrived. A staircase led downward, deeper than I expected. Damp air rushed up to meet me, carrying the stench of rot and earth and something older than either. I didn't think. I just moved. At the bottom of the stairs was a rusted metal door. I kicked it open. Inside was a narrow tunnel, stone walls, dirt floor, flickering lights overhead that buzzed in protest. I don't know why I knew to come down here. I just knew, like something was guiding me, like my feet were obeying a memory that didn't belong to me. The tunnel led to a room, circular, carved out of stone. In the center stood a table identical to the one upstairs, and on it, another drawer, a single drawer, numbered to 1. My breath caught in my throat. There was no drawer 21 upstairs, only 20. This one, it felt wrong. The metal was darker, almost black, and cold, even from across the room. It didn't hum like the others. It throbbed a pulse you could feel in your ribs. And on the wall, in red, were 3 words: feed or become. I didn't know what it meant at first, until I saw the ledger. It was resting beside the drawer, another logbook, thicker than all the others combined. I opened it. Inside were names, dates, and next to each one of 2 labels: fed or taken. My grandfather's name was near the top, next to it. Fed. Father Mallory's name appeared further down, fed, then, on the last page blank, except for one entry, my name. No label yet, just waiting. The air shifted behind me. I turned, and there it was. The same thing from the photo. The thing that wasn't human, that didn't walk so much as slide across space. Its arms hung low and crooked, hands dragging across the stone floor. Its grin was wide, impossibly so, splitting its face like a crack in glass. But it didn't attack. It just watched, waited for me to choose. I looked at the ledger again. Feed or become. I thought of the flowers, the rules, the lives that had gone into keeping this thing satisfied but contained. I remembered the woman's voice from drawer 7, the screams, the pleading. Was she real or just a trap? Then I looked back at the drawer to 1. My drawer. It was open by exactly 4 inches, no more, no less, just like the rules said. I made a decision. I picked up the ledger, and I wrote. I added a new rule, right there in blood smeared from a cut I hadn't even realized was on my palm. If you hear your name from inside the drawer, don't run, don't scream, close it, and pray it forgets. Then I slammed drawer 21 shut. Hard. The thing hissed. Not in anger, in laughter, like I'd played the game exactly how it wanted. The tunnel collapsed behind me as I ran. I didn't stop until I was outside, gasping, my clothes soaked in sweat and dirt. When I looked back, the building seemed still, too still, like it was waiting again. I left that night, didn't pack, didn't lock the door, just drove. Miles and miles of nothing, until the morgue was a dot in the rearview mirror, then gone entirely, swallowed by trees and memory and fog. I don't know how long I was on the road. Days blurred, towns flickered past. I didn't speak to anyone, didn't stop except for gas. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the drawers, heard the soft hiss of metal, the click of them opening just a little too far. Eventually, I rented a room in a nameless town, one with no morgue, no graveyard. I burned the clothes I wore that night. I smashed the phone that had photos of the ledger. I tried to forget, but the thing is, the rules never left me. They're still in my head, perfectly memorized, like a song you can't stop humming. Sometimes, I catch myself counting drawers in gas station bathrooms, making sure no flowers are near the door of my motel room. Once, I heard tapping from the closet. I didn't open it, didn't speak, didn't approach. I think that saved me, but only for now, because something is changing again. Last night, I woke up to find a sheet of paper on the floor beside my bed. Same handwriting, same rules, except now, there are 9. The new one: if you leave the morgue, it will build another. That was all. No warning, no threats, just a statement. And this morning when I went to the diner across the street, I noticed something. The old building next door. It's being renovated. The windows are boarded. A van was parked outside, plain white. No markings. The workers wore no company logos, no tags. But when they left the door open to carry in equipment, I saw the inside. Cold tile, long hallways, and along the wall a row of metal drawers. 20 of them. For now, I'm not going to run. It doesn't matter anymore, because I understand now. It doesn't want to be free. It wants to be remembered. It wants routine. It wants rules. It wants someone, anyone, to keep counting. And I was never the last drawer. I was just the next one to hold the key. Final line, chilling twist. This morning, I heard a tap from inside the motel mini fridge, and then it whispered my name twice.